at a local meet, if you're paying $75, what are you getting?
You're getting ripped off. That's what you're getting. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the O-Lift podcast, where we discuss relevant and educational topics in Olympic weightlifting. My name is Anton Jefferson.
And I'm JP Nicoletta. Welcome to another episode of the O-Lift podcast. Today, we're going to talk about competitions, local competitions mostly, the market for competitions, and what we've been seeing, particularly in the U.S. Some of that has to do with my past month, which we'll get into. But before we get into that,
let's talk about black tape. We have black tape, newest thumb tape on the market. It's tacky, it's flexible, and it lasts your entire workouts. And another added bonus is once you remove it, there's no leftover residue on your thumbs. If you're a weightlifter, you need tape. You're probably going to need tape after a while, and you should check us out at theoliftmag.com.
And for being such great listeners to the O-Lift podcast, we are giving away 10% off. Use the promo code BLACK10 when you go to the O-Lift website. You will receive a 10% discount on your next order of black tape. Thank you, everyone, for the support. And Anton, go ahead, ask me the question.
Yeah, so you've had an interesting month this past month. Let's start by, giving us an overview of the month and all the competitions you've been to, JP.
It's a good thing that I don't have kids or probably a life for that matter, but this is not a calendar month. But over the course of 4 weeks, I ran a local competition in New York with good friend Steve Tria. He was great, and we had what I thought was a great experience with that meet, but that was a full weekend. And then the weekend after, I went to Kansas City for the National Juniors. I tested for my international category 2 referee card and did a lot of work on the webcast as well as other just stuff, officiating, running around. That was a lot of fun. Came home for 3 days, went to Columbus for the Arnold, which once again was mayhem and awesome, way to spend a few days. And now I'm back home. And this weekend, the day after we're recording this, I'm going back to another local meet tomorrow.
So it's safe to say you love weightlifting.
Well, or like I said,
enjoy the sport enough.
Maybe I need another hobby. I don't know. But point is, I'm starting to get a little burned out on it. And I'm glad I've got 3 whole weeks to do nothing before we head down to Gainesville for the University Nationals. And point is that this all is coming together in like a soup that's making me wonder about the status of competitions in the country. And are we sort of hitting a saturation point in weightlifting in regard to meets?
You beg a lot of questions there. So I want to dissect all of this bit by bit. So let's start by talking about the local competition that you ran. You didn't tell me anything about that, man.
This is actually the second year we did it. It's called the Impervious Open, and we do it at CrossFit Impervious, which is in Riverhead, New York. And for those of us in New York or on the East Coast, it's the relative equivalent of the end of the earth. I mean, you're talking about the North Fork of Long Island, good maybe 70 or so miles from Manhattan, and it's at the end of the Long Island Expressway. So there's population, obviously, on Long Island, but we're all the way out at the end with where we did this. And my theory in doing it there, first of all, it's a great little venue. It's a great club, that Impervious team. And my thought process when we decided to do it there was that right now, weightlifting competitions are so hot that it doesn't matter where we go, that people will come. And I got a little bit of an education on that because locally I'm in the Metropolitan 6 LWC, and we're going to get into this. We have a cap of 1 meet per month inside our LWC. What I figured is if we have the meet, we do a good job with it, people will come. We struggled to get to about 40 people. I'm not sure that we had 40 people. What we did get as a result was, 3 sessions, pretty timely. It ran smooth and it was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a throwback, but it wasn't that beast of a meet that we've been seeing quite often where we'll have 60 to 100 plus lifters. In our LWC, we ran a no frills meet in December that had 110 lifters. That was a little bit closer to Manhattan. But point is that I figured just by virtue of holding it, we would get north of 40 or 50 people, and that was a struggle. So we also should talk about like value and how things come together on it.
It's out there. I mean, I think 40 is a fantastic turnout for its geographical location.
Not here, not anymore. But I think it was a combination of a couple of things. One of them being the location, the other being the options. So if I just wait 4 weeks, I can go to something 40 or 50 miles closer, depending on where I live in New York.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? And there's a lot of other things going on that would require travel that may make me disinterested over this time period. Because don't forget, the week that we ran this meet was a few days before the CrossFit Open started. That impacts local meets around the country, I think, but I'm not 100% sure what that impact is. The other thing that we did, though, we made sure that all of the lifters got little goodie bags. You know, they got
Oh,
bars, they
that's
got a
nice.
shaker, they got some discounts. We reached out to several companies, and Steve Tria again did a great job with this. He reached out to Caffeine and Kilos, Alico, Fit
Oh,
Aid,
nice.
some local retailers, and they gave us discounts. They gave us stuff to give away, and we had a lot of value to give back. And I held our entry fee to what we've been charging at other local meets in the market, and I made sure that we gave a little bit more in hopes that it would be appreciated and seen over time, and that we would get a better reputation for it. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I think about. And I'll ask you, Anton, what do you think is a fair price for a local meet entry fee?
For a local meet, if I'm just Joe Schmo putting it on and we're all coming together, like $20 is pretty reasonable. When we start to get into $40 and $50, we start to ostracize people, especially youth athletes. When say a parent has three kids, participating at the gym, as at $50 a pop, it's not impossible, but it's definitely not just pennies. And
All
so
right.
I think we should stick to an agreeable number, and I think that should come from the top. Like, you know what, if you hold a local meet, you can't charge more than this, and if so, it's not a sanctioned meet. I don't know, but I feel as though people are getting over on like offering pretty much nothing. It's just like, oh, you coming and lifting, and you guys are giving away stuff, and that sounds pretty awesome.
It's an experience versus value for the dollar kind of argument.
Exactly.
I got to tell you, I don't know a world anymore that lives in a $20 entry fee.
Yeah, I know, right?
I
I
don't
know, right?
really know a world anymore that lives in a $40 entry fee
Yeah.
environment. Although I suspect around the country there is still a decent amount of that, in different markets or territories around the country.
I paid $75 for the American Open. All right, now what's going to be a higher echelon kind of meet? It's not necessarily giving me things, but I get access to lifters who I don't get to see, but maybe once or twice a year. There's some nice venues that are out there, and it's like a proper vacation in a way.
Well, yeah, let's ignore the related expenses of going
Okay.
to an American Open or a national meet because, yeah, you've
Hmm.
got travel, you've got hotel, you've got more expensive food as a
Hmm.
result of being away from home. For that $75, what do you get? Or $100, whatever it is. I thought it was more than 75, but whatever. Point is, you're getting a high quality production. You're getting a live webcasted
Yeah,
event. You're
yeah.
getting a big stage. You're getting top notch competition around you. You're getting the ability to lift with
Quality equipment.
quality equipment, et cetera, et cetera. In exchange for that, at a local meet, if you're paying $75, what are you getting?
You're getting ripped off. That's what you're getting.
You're not getting that necessarily. I mean, if some dude is slapping down, a couple of sheets of plywood, throwing up a pipe and drape,
Yeah.
giving out crappy bowling trophies
Yeah.
for $75, like seems like a lot.
Yeah, well, I'll mention a meet that I'm really interested in. Hopefully, one day I get to go to is the Barbells and Brews that Travis Cooper does.
Yeah. By
That
the way,
sounds
I think that
amazing.
could be a branded traveling thing, but that's a
Yeah,
$75 entry fee if you early bird, and then 85
yeah.
if you're past that early bird deadline. But what are you
Yeah.
getting in exchange? Other than
It,
beer,
it
which is
sounds. I
awesome.
mean, yeah. Which is. I mean, do you need anything else? But but it sounds as though it's an experience. It's creating an area for spectators to come to enjoy something that they would like beer and stumble upon something new like weightlifting or in a sense. I don't know, but it's definitely creative and it's a lot more interesting than
It's
just
more
like
than holding a meet in a gym basement somewhere, right? But
exactly.
you're
Exactly.
getting other things in exchange for that. Even if it's not, the grand stage of a nationals, there's There's going to be photography there. There's going to be sponsors that are helping to improve the event. There's going to be, I think, a buzz on it and high interest. A lot of that adds into value in exchange for that $75. Whereas right now, I think LWC championships or state championships are not allowed to be priced above the cost of a USAW national meet. That's the only restriction on cost that I'm aware of for entry.
That's good.
Behind
People are pushing it though.
They are, but now compare it to, say, the Arnold, where the Arnold can be, I think it's like $107 or $110.
Okay.
And then it's an upcharge if you want your T-shirt, if you want a T-shirt as well. But think about what you're getting in exchange for that. There's so much value there that's not comparable to the regular meet. I mean, if you've got a weekend access pass to the convention itself, you've got an environment.
Do you get all access to everything else if you compete?
Yeah, the wristband gets you into the convention center. So you can go see the other stuff.
You can go anywhere.
You get highest quality equipment. Every warm-up platform had brand new Rogue competition sets on them.
Nice.
Training hall. How many local meets have a training hall?
Nope.
Plus you've got webcast.
You can show up early.
But you've got a webcast, you've got high production quality across the board that rivals or is at least comparable to USAW national events, if not better, in some arguments. And that's not a knock on the USAW, but there's value there for that $120 or that $110, right? That you don't get elsewhere. The other question that I was kicking around is, will there be a point where there's just too much and are we getting to a point where the USAW may start cannibalizing athletes from local meets? And I'll unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
I looked through past history and some results, and here's what I found just talking about availability of local meets. 2012, March and April, that's where we are now in the year. In 2012, there were 41 meets in the country, not including.
And when you say March to April, you're saying March 1st to April 30th, correct?
Yeah, the month, the full 2 months.
Okay.
In 2012, there were 41 meets. By 2015, there were 79 meets. This year, not including the Arnold, not including the Masters Nationals, not including the American Open Series, and not including the National Juniors that happened the last weekend of February. There are 97 meets going on around the country.
Including those meets that would bump it up to one-on-one. That's crazy.
Incredible math skills. Correct.
Yeah.
But think about all of that. Now, we've got way more participation in the sport, obviously, but we've more than doubled the amount of competitions that are available to people. And the question is do we have the growth to sustain more and more of this, or are we at some point going to start seeing dips as more and more competitions become available? Meaning, will my local meet with 40 people go back to being the norm as opposed to 80 or 90, 100 people in a local meet?
That's a fantastic question, which I don't have the answer to. I mean, if I can predict anything, it would be, there's always a boom and then there's a burst. Will we have to reinvent ourselves, or will we have to, strategically come up with, a plan to sustain growth in weightlifting? Or are we at a point where weightlifting is becoming a spectator sport and this is the phenomenal or exponential growth that we can expect?
So here's what my theory has been like over the last year or so, or 2 years really. I think going back 2 years ago, we were getting to an end of the boom on seminars and classes and courses like that teach me phase, right?
Yes.
We still have a ton of USAW courses. I think that the number of courses available has grown year over year, but I think attendance is down on some of those. Yeah. So I believe that we sort of hit that peak of what I'll call weightlifting education, right? And then what filled in quickly is where we are now, sort of at peak with the online programming thing. And that feels like a natural evolution. That feels like people who...
That's the next wave.
Right?
If you aren't on it, you're behind. Online programming is like the thing.
Yeah, and if you follow weightlifters and weightlifting online, I think you see a lot less of come to my seminar versus join my remote team or get your programming from me kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it is like, why pay $300 when I can pay $30 and get, arguably same value?
Well, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
because costs are all over the place for that. But
Yeah.
my point ultimately is that I feel that is where we are, which is a natural evolution. People are getting programming because they sort of know how to lift now, or more and more people know how to do the lifts. They want education on what to be doing in training. And ultimately, the reason is bleed over into competition. And that's where we're at with competition. I think we're at the beginning of that boom. And I hope it lasts a while, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I like your theory. I like the fact that, we were in not a dark time, but a very niche time a few years ago, half a decade ago, I would say. And then we took this time to, for some reason, we got a way to educate people more and more. I mean, obviously, CrossFit has helped out a lot with that, giving us an opportunity to teach more coaches, hold more courses, get the sport out there more. And now it's at a point, like you said, where people are finding education a lot faster than before. I mean, I look at what my coach had to do compared to what I have to do today to learn something about weightlifting. Like, he didn't have Google. That makes a big difference. There was no YouTube. There weren't many blogs or weightlifting websites where they're constantly these, top level coaches are putting out great content, or regular guys are just putting out content that works and helps. So we're in an interesting time. It's scary, but I think it's scary in a good way. Just don't know what to expect next.
We've got right now a couple of days before Masters Nationals is going on. I think there's a few hundred lifters there, right? That's a dual platform 4-day meet.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's off the heels of the Arnold, which was, I believe, 300 or so lifters on a 4-day meet that was run off of one platform. The National Juniors, I want to say close to 400 lifters.
Mm-hmm.
And then the American...
Which is a fantastic competition, by the way.
It is. It's great. It was great, by the way. And then bouncing a week ahead to where we are, the American Open's first series, which is out west, which is, I think, drawing a huge number of lifters, is about to go off. So if all of that is happening, is the sport bigger than I'm able to digest, in that all these local meets can still be sustained, or are we going to start pulling?
I'll say this. When you went to the American Open, how many people did you know this year? How many people could you recognize this year as opposed to 5 years, 10 years ago?
Big picture, a fraction. Yeah.
Yes.
I would say a fraction.
So, I mean, the sport's growing. And with any sport, to get into that commercialized zone, like where you're hitting the masses, it takes a lot more on the lower level, so to say, getting more spectators and making the barrier for entry much easier, getting more, ambassadors. Like, there's so many wheels that have to be turning at the same time. And I think the greatest thing about this American Open series that people might come to realize is that, yeah, the totals are low purposely to make the barrier of entry for the sport more appealing. And then that guy who qualifies goes and tells his friends, and it's like a domino effect, in which I'm assuming. So
well, and it's webcasted and people can see it.
yeah,
from anywhere.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I'm going to a national meet. I don't care what you say if it's Series 1, Series 2. Like, I'm going to the American Open.
With that local feel to it, or with that intentionally low entry total, are you pulling people who would otherwise be lifting at local meets away from their local competition? That's what I'm saying. So the question for you, Anton, even to think about is, how many times a year should you be competing? Say you're
Depends on the level of lifter.
All right.
I think Morgan King should compete 2 to 4 times a year.
Okay.
But somebody who just started, they can compete every month.
Okay. I would probably take a happy medium and say 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, and you have a reasonably distant, and what I mean by that is a reasonably reachable large competition from wherever you are, I think you're going to key in on that, right? So if I'm going through my own calendar, my own level of lifting, like, I would want to pencil out, say, an Arnold or a barbells and brews type of meet if I could get to it easily this time of year. And then I'm looking at trying to get to nationals in late spring. That's 2 meets right there over the course of 4 months. I don't know that I'm competing in
Okay.
between those.
Well, I agree with you at that. Well, when I say competition too, I'm including like gym meets. I don't know if anybody does these anymore, but that could be a whole topic in itself. But we held gym meets, which were basically like a heavy Saturday, But it's an
Unsanctioned?
unofficial. Sometimes they were sanctioned actually, because at the time my coach was the LWC president, so it was just like he could do it. He had the authority to do so without much hassle. So that was a cool experience. So we would have gym meet. The name of it is whatever the day is, and we would show up and we weigh in, we put our entry totals, and you just, whenever you were ready, you call them. And I mean, it wasn't as stringent with time and so forth, but we had like, we set it up and ran it like a gym meet. Yeah. So with those, I would say, you're throwing those in there like a heavy Saturday in there at least once a month.
Depends on how you're programmed, how you're scheduled
Yeah,
out, what
yeah,
you're
of
doing.
course, of
So
course.
there's a lot of variation in that. And there's a whole mixed bag of things with
Yeah,
everybody being different and every coach wanting different things and every lifter wanting different things. The point is that there are more options available now than ever. And I don't care where in the country you are. I think,
yeah. You can get access to weightlifting, and when it used to be the opposite.
except for really remote areas, I would think that at least once a month, you're probably within a 4 hour drive of a competition.
Mm.
With that, I mean, because I live in New York, obviously, so we literally have one every month. And
Yeah,
that's created its own bag of issues because in our LWC right now, one of the things that we're struggling with is the request for holding even more meets because
mm.
our territory is so large that if you have a meet in Brooklyn, why can't you have a meet in Westchester or somewhere east on Long Island on the same weekend or within a couple of weeks of each other? And some of the
Yeah,
people who don't have access or cannot run a meet because of our rules are really starting to bark about it. And we've got to make a
yeah.
decision as to how we're going to allow for that type of expansion.
Number one, we got to look at what's good for the sport. Is having more meets going to hurt the sport? I don't know. I wouldn't argue against it, but also the size or the population, the weightlifting population in your state, and also the size of your state. That's something to consider. Like when you got, obviously New York is going to have. I'm assuming New York has more weightlifters than Idaho. That runs into an issue of where do you balance it, or how many are you running, or your rules needed to be updated because they don't fit the population anymore.
Nobody would speak against growth as being a bad thing. I think for the sport,
Yeah,
nobody's going to say that. But
yeah,
it might get painful for some of the people who put on meets to start hitting lower results or start having less of a turnout because there's more competition. What ultimately will happen is that the meet directors who do a better job will get a better turnout. But the
yes,
people who have it now and are comfortable with frankly, the money that they've been bringing in when 70 lifters show up for doing
mm-hmm.
a pretty low frill setup are not going to be happy.
Mm.
The other side of it is that you just don't know for sure. And what you're doing is if you allow lower barriers to have a competition, you could be testing that saturation point very quickly. So we can start
Mm.
seeing 15 or 20 people at meets if we start allowing too many. The other side of it is that there are only so many people with time that I have, right?
Exactly,
It is a pain in the ass to run a meet. I don't care
exactly.
whether you think it's overpriced or
Whether you're
underpriced.
good at it or not, like I'm sure Mark Canella used to have hair when I saw the first Arnold's, So just gotta put that
That was 15 years ago.
out there.
He's on a whole nother bandwidth with what he's doing there.
Yeah,
You need staff, you need help, you need people to load, you need people to officiate. If there's a meet every 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, there has to be a lot of support in the area, not just in terms
yeah,
of lifters, but in terms of people to help you conduct that meet. That's where the expansion can go too far, is if the integrity of what you're doing gets tested. And we don't want
yeah,
that. I don't know, but ultimately I am in the camp of more for
yeah.
now.
More meats in a way that it's going to help the sport grow. And like you said, it doesn't create low quality meets. You want to go to a meet that's run well, and you want to do it right, and you want to represent the sport well.
If you pay $50
Yeah.
for an entry fee, what do you expect at minimum while you're there?
I expect at minimum, I mean, obviously top three get trophy, so opportunity to win a trophy or a medal. I expect to meet somebody who has some significant experience to which I could talk to, like when we ran a local meet, we would always have somebody like a symposium. Like Tommy Kono came, Zygmunt Smalza came. We had coaches from Oregon football team, Chicago Bulls. Like we had people there that like your coach is coming down, but also he's going to learn something. If you guys want to come the day before or the day after, this is an opportunity. And then also, if I could buy a T-shirt, which I've kind of been bad at doing so at meets, but when I look back at it, I think I should have. But yeah, so if I can win something, take home a little goodie bag or a T-shirt, and if I can meet somebody who can just give me some knowledge about the sport, who's been in it for a while, or you're doing something successful, or take a photo, at the time I didn't even know who Tommy Kono was, like, and I should have took a photo with him. But yeah, that's what I would expect from a local meet.
I'll add a little bit onto that. I would expect at a $50 or $60 price point for everything to be in kilos. I don't want to go in the warm-up.
Of course, of course, of course. That's a number one. That's I'm not paying.
But I think it's common. I think you'll see a competition set on the platform, but you'll see a mix of pound and kilo plates. I mean, I think that if somebody's going to charge that much, there should be. I think that there should be enough room in the warm-up room, but I think there should be a clean and well-situated warm-up room. And I think there should be a sense of organization. I don't think at that dollar amount, there should just be wood slapped down on the floor and a mess, right?
Yeah.
I think that there should be some sense of organization. There should be a professional look to it. And it's funny, when you mentioned the thing about T-shirts, the thing that came to mind for me is purple M&M from, the brown M&Ms or whatever it was for Van Halen. Like when they were going to a venue, they put in their contract that a certain color M&Ms needed to be removed.
Yeah.
The idea behind that was
People had to read the whole contract.
right. If they weren't detailed enough to read that and to actually do what they wanted, they had concerns over the venue setup. T-shirts are sort of that for me with weightlifting, because it is very hard to do T-shirts and not lose money. And if there is somebody who has an organization or a plan behind doing add-on stuff like a T-shirt or like a giveaway, that means they've put in some work and thought into more than just the lifting, right? And that's something that I think about. And we've gotten away from it because I'll tell you, it is very, very difficult to do little things like that and not have it be a total waste of your time or money. So that's sort of a good line in the sand. And the other thing is, has a meet been there before, right? If it's been there before, you can generally look up the results,
what to expect.
See what's been there, maybe have gone there yourself, or maybe be familiar with the meet director. I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is you can't just build it and expect that they'll come. There's got to be more of a draw. There's got to be something catchy and cool about it. And we're harping on these two meets, the Arnold and even Barbells and Bruises as an example. But I think those are two examples that do it on the really high end at completely different levels, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully we can keep monitoring what's going on with local competitions and touch back on the subject later. Let's talk about National Juniors, man. You were there. You tested for your Category 2. You did webcasting, and I just want to know about your experience at Juniors, man. Just talk all about it. So
I passed, which was nice. I passed the
that's good.
test.
Were you nervous? Were you nervous at all?
Not really. Although I did have the bungle, which I have been enjoying quite a bit of torment over, and I'm so sorry that it happened. But with CJ, I was reffing and testing during the 69A, and I just had a moment of stupidity, quite frankly, on the one lift that probably the entire weightlifting country watches. But
so that was you behind that. I didn't know that until.
Yeah, I was reffing. I was the CJ quote unquote red light, which, by the way, people at home might not have been able to know that I turned around right away. And I turned around to the jury and I said, guys, that was a white light. My bad. And then I went over to the two doctors who were doing the webcast and I said, guys, here's what happened. Don't kill me. And they just started laughing at me and
Yeah.
which is deserve it. And I'm so sorry that I got, or that I became part of that. But point is that at the end of the day, the right thing happened. CJ made a great lift and it was awesome to watch that close. I mean, he smoked that 139. What I did was I just accidentally, not thinking, I flipped the light box over in my hand and the white light is usually on my left. Without realizing it, while I was waiting for him to come out during the 2-minute clock, I just turned it around and I didn't know that I hit the red. And I didn't see the red until it came up on the scoreboard. And I'm like, who the hell did that? And I was like, oh, that's my light. That was me. And by the time it pops up on the scoreboard, you can't turn it around because the 3-second window that you have has gone by.
Yeah.
So I literally didn't know I hit a red light. It happened. And believe me, if there was another red light, I would have been out of my seat in a second to to fight to get that turned around. So it was goofy. It happened, but whatever. I don't think the jury held that one against me when they were scoring, or if they did, I got enough right to still pass the test. And then doing other stuff, like this was also the first time that the marshalling, the cards were laid out how you go in the IWF. And we mentioned in our last episode that we didn't think that there would be a problem, and there wasn't at all. People were really cool about the new format. And
really,
what they did was they used the cards in the stationary form. So the cards on the table at the marshalling stand did not move. It was frankly easier for me as a marshal. I just had a point to tell people where to sign and what to do without having to shuffle and scramble stuff around like when 4 or 5 people came over. So the cards stayed in place. But what they did do is they let the scoreboard update in the warm-up room to the order of lifting. When coaches and athletes were in the back and they were looking at the screen did show the order of lifting. And everybody seemed to catch on just fine. And what Phil said was, hey, let's do this in stages. Ultimately, in time, both will be stationary. But for now, let's go with it this way. Maybe they'll do it for a couple more meets. Maybe they'll do it for the rest of the year this way.
Get used to it.
Yeah, but it was good. It worked fine. They also switched to a new system, Les Simonton's, and didn't crash. It worked. It worked really good. That's all the technical stuff on the platform itself. I thought the lifting was great. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch youth and juniors lifting big weights. I mean, it was really good.
That's awesome, man. I was looking up the hook grip video because I wanted to see the red light myself, and he actually made a note of it on the video. There was an error by the judge. He reversed his mistake. He pointed an arrow to it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, off the hook, man.
It was fun. So, I had a couple of people send me the IWF rulebook. I had people.
Oh my gosh! You were getting trolled like the whole weekend. Death threats and everything.
And then the Arnold was interesting in that Arnold comes in every year. He pops in. He sits down.
Yeah.
In the venue.
I saw a photo of you sitting in a comfortable black leather chair.
Those are from Canella's basement. Those are his.
Wow.
He lays them out at the Arnold every year for the refs. And what he did was he told me before the session, he's like, hey, Arnold is going to come in at some point, give him the center chair. Let him ref a little bit. I was like, sure. And without realizing it, you sort of know when he's coming in. And I knew he was coming in, but right as I saw him, there was a lifter on the platform, so I didn't stand up. And he just walked right in front of me, shook my hand. He's like, oh, hello. And he plopped down in the seat next to me. And I was like, oh, I'll take the seat. And he said, no. And he hung out. It was me, Mark, his manager, like his primary handler that goes with him everywhere. And he sat there for about 10 or 15 minutes and, had a conversation, got up. He turned around while the lifter was on the platform and started taking pictures of the crowd.
Yeah, selfies. And
it was great. And the lifter didn't even notice. The lifter just made her lift and she walked off, and then her coach pointed to him and then she waved to him. It was just great.
Yeah. I saw another video of him do that in the bodybuilder competition where he's taking selfies while the guys are on stage posing.
Yeah, and it was funny. While we were talking, he even asked, he's like, what's going to go on this weekend? And we said, hey, tomorrow at 1:00 is when the really good, men lifters are. There's, a couple of guys who could take cracks at unofficially breaking the American record, in the 105 and the 94s. And he's like, oh, who is that? And we told him Colin Burns. And he said, all right, well, I'll check my schedule. Maybe I'll come back. And me and
Mhm.
Mark were looking at each other like, okay, that'll be cool. Arnold left a few minutes later. We were like, hey, should we tell Colin this? Do you think uh, we should tell him that? Because one of the things that Arnold actually said to me, he's like, I'll come back. And while he's
Mhm.
lifting, I'll Snapchat it out. I
Did he
guess
say
that's
I'll
what,
come back or did he say I'll be back?
yeah. He did yell it, just do it to somebody who was on the audience.
Just do it.
Yeah, he did that. But I guess what 70-year-old stars are using now is Snapchat, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
But we were thinking about it and we said, actually, that would probably put a lot of buzz on Colin if Arnold were to come in and actually do that. Should we tell him? And Mark's like, I don't know if he'll really come back. And I don't know if he would like that. If you're a lifter trying to win 10 grand, which Burns was in the mix for, it was a huge competition or 7,500, whatever it was. I mean, that's a lot of money. And I don't know if he
Mm.
wanted the distraction. So we were
Yeah.
sitting there like, all right, let's not say anything. And if Arnold shows up, then we'll just roll with it. But we actually, for a second, thought like, should we tell these guys? And we chose not to. And it turns out Arnold didn't come back, so it worked out fine. The other thing that I'll say for the Arnold again, packed audience. All the days that even on Thursday there was a good audience for the Masters, and the Masters lifters were very good. The ones who decided to go to the Arnold and chose to forego Masters Nationals. I mean, it was pretty high quality lifting. I thought for Masters lifters. I really enjoyed it. It was two great weekends in a row.
I think the Arnold usually gets a large proportion of masters lifters to turn out. I don't know what it is, but they show up for the Arnold.
Yeah, the organizers and Mark Canella in particular, they have been well supported by Masters lifters in the early years, and they made a point
Hmm.
to continue to support Masters lifters and to continue to raise the prizes. Nobody really offers prize money to Masters,
Mm.
and this meet does. So the turnout is good, and people seem to be okay with the Thursday thing. There wasn't really much grumbling from what I saw about lifting on Thursday, and I was surprised the venue really had a nice amount of people in it, even though the exhibition really, or the convention really hadn't started yet on Thursday. That was mainly still a setup day, and there were people there. There was energy in the room, and it was a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Any big lifts that you can talk about? I know Colin Burns is there. I know that the guy from Cuba, 210 weightlifting.
Oh, Yadier Quesada.
Yeah, talk about some big lifts on the lady side, and then let's jump into the guys. Just anything that you can remember off the top of your head. Like you said, Cat Lee did a great job.
Yeah, Cat Lee did a great job. Pope looked good. There were, there were. I'm sorry to say, it all blends together at a certain point.
I hear you, man. I mean, you've been just looking at weightlifting for the past month. I mean,
What got Burns. I do remember this on Burns. I'll tell you this much about. He missed 70 on his second attempt, and that was too bad because it looked good.
mm,
And he came back and made it on his third. I think he probably would have taken a 5 kilo increase if he would have made it on his second. That would have been awesome. The other thing
hmm
too is that his clean at 208 was legit.
yeah,
Unfortunately, he missed the jerk, but I mean, he's clearly playing at a higher level now. If he can get into that 205, 210 clean and jerk range, I mean, that's good stuff. And then Quesada, we had heard, wasn't in great shape, but I feel like once he got in that room, his first attempt, I think it was 145, looked a little shaky, but by the time he was out for his second and third attempts, I think he was just wrapped up in it, and it didn't matter.
he's in the zone, in flow state.
It was great to watch. Those were obviously the top performers on the men's side. And then the one thing I think in the venue that we noticed is people really dug it. The audience really dug it. It didn't matter if it was high profile lifters. And the other thing that got the audience going more than anything is if a lifter pulled out a gritty, tough fight on an
Oh,
attempt,
yeah,
people really got into it, and then the energy in the room stayed. That
really.
was the biggest driver of atmosphere. A gritty effort by somebody is what really just sparked the room, and that's what kept the momentum going through all of it. And it was time and again, that's what did it. The last thing that I would say is that the way that they ran the format this year was they cut back on the number of people in sessions from like 18 to
Nice.
14, and that was the right move. Everything flowed on time, and the room was still crowded at 7 p.m. during the last session on
Wow.
Saturday night, which sometimes it could be harder to keep activity and energy in there, and it never waned. So that was the best part for me.
Yeah, I remember my experience of going to the Arnold. Was it 2013 or 2014? It was always just standing room. Like it was always packed, and it just felt like it went forever. And it sounds like things are rolling a lot better. Sponsorships are doing pretty well, and it's always great to get people paid for weightlifting. That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, I was listening into the junior session, going back to juniors, and you and Phil Andrews were trading punches back and forth. That was that
77s,
was
yeah.
quite hilarious.
He was on the
Yeah,
webcast. We did the webcast together. That was great. It was a lot of fun to do that. I really enjoyed doing the webcast stuff also. So
yeah.
that's where I'm hoping to spend more time at senior nationals doing that with Dave and Jonas and Mike Graber now and David Tao of Barbend and some
Hmm.
others. There'll be plenty other people that get mixed into it. So that's what I really enjoy the most now, and hopefully I'll get a chance to keep doing it.
Definitely. So to wrap this up, what's the biggest meet in New York? We talked about before we got on the show the Empire State Games
Oh, it used to
before,
be
but
the Empires. Yeah, that's gone
that's
unfortunately. But
yeah.
right now, I think the biggest meet, at least on our calendar, is the Metropolitan Championships, which is the LWC Championships that happens. I want to say it's definitely in the fall. I think it's October now. It used to be November. That's the biggest one because you have to compete in that in order to be eligible for an LWC award. So that always has a big draw. And then there have been a couple of meets that have been popping up the last 2 or 3 years. There are two meets in Brooklyn that are run very well that they get an entire market of people that I don't really even know or see that often. So I think it's great. That's like a great thing. They're well run. And then I'm partial to my meet, the Impervious Open, which we do usually in April, but this year we did in February. I think it's going to switch back. So again, with a meet every month, it's hard to pick what the best one is, but we're all, I think, improving the quality and the experience of these meets. I just hope we continue to get the growth and the support.
Definitely. Hey, well, this has been a great episode, JP. I hope you guys can stick around and subscribe and keep listening. We got a couple new episodes and really fantastic interviews that we got planned up for you guys. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed.